Thank you, Curtis. Thank you for getting us going this morning. And folks, thank you for joining us. My name is Brent, as Curtis already shared with you. We're looking forward to jumping into our earnings call lab for August, which we're going to be looking at Deere and Company, as we all know, John Deere, a great organization providing various equipment for everything from agricultural to construction, etc. A great company and a great one to look at. In fact, I want to highlight one of our great friends. Mr. David Elser is the one who recommended us doing this. Now, David's the author of Doing the Chores. I hope that's okay to share, David. I think you're on. A great book about learning leadership skills through doing our chores or growing up on kind of a farming community. Growing up in Idaho, I really resonated with that. And I think what a great company to look at. A company that is very focused on construction, as we know, with homes and other major construction groups, but also very well known in the farming or agricultural space. So thank you, David. Looking forward to spending some time today. Well, folks, as we jump in today, I want to make sure some of our tools are working just fine as we get going. So as Curtis described, make sure that you have the go ahead and open your chat box. And in the chat box, here's what I'm interested in having you put there. Just jot down where you're calling in from. Could be a city, could be a state, maybe a country, maybe a location in your house, as we're still doing hybrid for many of us. Where are you calling in from? As we get going, my team here, we're just south of Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City here, where our claim to fame was in 2002. We had the opportunity to host the Winter Olympics. And we just found out with Olympics a couple weeks ago that we're going to get to host again the Winter Olympics of 2034, I believe. So we're looking forward to that opportunity. It seems like yesterday we were doing it, but I guess it was 20 some years ago. So anyways, looks like we're working great. And as Curtis described, we're going to be using that chat box as a key way to interact as we get going today. Well, another tool we're going to be using is our polling tool. So here I've got a poll. I just want to make sure it's up and running. So the poll question that I'm going to ask is, who has actually had a chance to attend one of these webinars? So the webinar that we're holding today is a monthly event that we provide for anybody, but particularly for those learners who come through our course. We're a business and financial acumen training consulting firm. We help employees understand how their companies make money, how decisions are made around the money-making process, but most importantly, what can they do to drive the end results? And so people will come through a course where they get to look at their company's financial performance, their strategy, their organization, and really distill it down to, so what can I do as an operation leader? What can I do as a finance leader? What can I do as an HR leader? How can I impact the success of this organization? And so these earnings call webinars is a chance for people to take the tools we use in our course and actually use them to assess various companies. Of course, today we're doing Deere and Company, but we'll do various industries, various organizations. It's a great way if you want to get better at understanding business in general, be able to understand how to assess a publicly traded company, both from the strategic focus as well as the financial performance. These are great little reviews that we provide for our learners and anybody else who wants to join us. So as we look at people and how many have had a chance, I'll share the results. It looks like, 61% of it's your first time. So thank you. If you're graduates from our program, congratulations on completing the course. And my guarantee to you is, as you come and engage in this type of learning 2 to 3 quarters consecutively, it will build your credibility, it'll build your career, and it'll build your company. So as we jump in today, we're going to talk about earnings calls, how to listen to what they are, how to listen to them, and I'm going to give you a little tool. This tool is going to provide you a simple framework and then 2 resources that will help you assess the strategic focus as well as the financial performance of the company. So with that in mind, let me ask one more poll question. And the question is you're coming to a course, a program on how to listen to an earnings call. So my question to you is, when's the last time you listened to an earnings call? Was it sometime earlier this year? We're into Q2. We finished Q2 if you're on an annual basis. Here at the end of this next month, September, we'll finish Q3. Now, John Deere is on a little bit different schedule. Theirs is not calendar. So we actually have their Q3 results that we're going to be looking at today. So when's the last time you listened to the call? Was it this year, last year? You know what, Brent? It's been a while. You know what, Brent? I've never listened to an earnings call, or at least one of us is saying right now, I would rather go to a dentist. Well, my hope today is to inspire at least that one person, or actually all of you, to have enough interest to say, you know what, I can do this. As I think about earnings calls, there's a stat that suggests that only about 25% of employees listen to their company's earnings calls. I imagine the percentage might even be less if for those that sell into publicly traded companies. How many of us, if I'm in a sales role, am I really using that information to assess what my customer's doing and how my product or service can drive towards their result? We do a whole course on building business acumen for sales professionals. How do I use information around business to align my solution with my customers' goals and objectives? So as we look at that, it looks like uh, many of you have, so that's great. About 80% or so, a majority of us actually have attended or participate. Well, these earnings calls are a great way to get clear if your company's publicly traded. What is it we're trying to do? How, and then be able to, how did we perform? And then take that information, distill it back to you as an individual and say, what can I do about it? Here at Acumen Learning, we've been in business for over 22 years. And what we found is that our senior leaders in all these large corporations are doing everything they can to squeeze it all out of the financial statements. It's not just large corporations, but mid-size or even small corporations. Our senior leaders are trying to drive greater cash flow, profitability, deploy their assets to drive asset strength as well as asset utilization. They want to grow their company, and they want to understand their external customers as well as get their teams aligned and engaged around what they're trying to accomplish. Well, what we find is our employees, as we go to many of we work with 34 of the Fortune 50, for example, what we find is these employees are functionally brilliant. You know more about your role than I will ever understand about your role. That being said, much like in other aspects of our lives, we get very focused on what our individual role within the company, or in my personal life, I'm very focused on the things that are important to me. Well, what business and financial acumen is about, and particularly what this how to listen to an earnings call can allow you to do, is to step back, get the big picture perspective, be able to see the big picture, what's going on with their company. Again, you already have that functional expertise. I want to take that big picture and then say, okay, now what can I do about it? So the ability to step back, assess, distill what's being communicated, whether that be your company, whether that be a customer, maybe it's a company you're interested in investing in. Whatever company you want to look at, how can I kind of distill that down to what can I do about it? If it's my own company, I'm going to take that information, go back to my team and say, okay, now let's go back to my role as an operator. Based upon what I heard strategically, financially, what can we do to drive these results? If it's looking at a customer, I can take that information and say, okay, as I get ready for my next call, I create my call plan. How can I connect what they're trying to do, their goals and objectives, and how a partnership with our company will drive towards those goals and objectives? Basically, help them make that business case. If you can do that as a sales leader, not only you're no longer a salesperson to that individual, you're actually a trusted partner. And then from an investment perspective, be able to see what they're doing and see how it fits, and then say, so what should I do? Where should I invest? Where should I hold? Where should I sell, etc.? Well, folks, that's what we want to try and do today as we jump in and get going today. With that brief introduction, let me just share some stats that are kind of interesting. Here's the results from our poll. As I said, majority of us have had a chance to listen. Excellent. Looks like we got a pretty experienced group. So my hope is to inspire you to do or engage, act around using this tool over the next 2 or 3 quarters. And I'm going to give you the tool and the resources and walk through it in the context of John Deere today. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and jump in to some sobering statistics. 95% of employees don't understand company strategies. Now, remember, I said about 25% of employees only about 25% of employees actually listen to their corporate communication around an earnings call. 95% of employees don't understand company strategy. And then this one, 90% of employees don't understand important business metrics. Now, these come from Harvard Business Review as well as research we've done ourselves. Now, imagine you're a CEO of a publicly traded company. Every quarter, you're required by law to submit to Security Exchange Commission your financial performance. You put together all this information. Do I just want to give them that information and hopefully they'll understand what I mean? By the way, it's all publicly available. I'll show you how to access it here in just a moment. What is it that I, as a leader, now imagine with some of those statistics, 25% of your employees is the amount of people that are engaging around listening to these calls. 95% of employees don't understand your strategy. 90% don't understand your key metrics and measures. Well, imagine you're the CEO of John Deere. Deere and Company is the name. Mr. May here. You got a very large organization, major player in equipment production industry. We all are very familiar with their brand, very well known. 83,000 employees. Now that's the employees of John Deere. Now, of course, they're manufacturing equipment, new technologies, etc. Then you have over 2,000 dealership locations, so dealers that are selling their new and used products or services. You're being impacted by things that are outside your control. Think about that. You think about industries like construction. Right now, we come out of COVID, we saw a real increase in a lot of places, an increase in construction of homes. But then all of a sudden, you have interest rates skyrocket. Now we're starting to see a little slowing down of the residential growth across the United States here. Then you deal with stuff like agriculture. And if you've ever lived in the middle of the United States or some of the various areas where you got a lot of agricultural farms and engagements around there, you're very dependent on what's going around. Stuff like weather, how much yield you get out of your crops, water availability. All these things play into whether or not you can be successful as a business. Well, of course, a huge focus in the company around technology and advancement, sustainability. So as you think about that, you imagine you're the CEO. The question I ask you is, what is it you want your employees to know? Well, what is it you want your customers to know? Those that use your buy or purchase your products or services. What about it? What is it as a publicly traded company you want your shareholders to know? And last but not least, as you think about especially John Deere, where they have over 2,000 dealerships. Those are really partners for John Deere. They're the sales force for John Deere. What is it you want your partners to know? That's what these earnings calls are all about. Now, of course, if you look at their mission, their vision, it says we deliver more value for our customers. That's what they're trying to accomplish. But from every quarter, from quarter to quarter, year to year, how do I help my employees know what we're trying to do, my customers know, my shareholders, as well as those partnerships? That's what these earnings calls are about. Now, my guarantee to you today, if you stick with this for the next 45 or so minutes and go through this experience, I'm going to introduce you to a tool. This tool is very simple. Even if you're not a graduate for our program, this can be useful to you. It provides you a simple framework of 5 drivers: cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. I'm going to suggest to you right now that those are the fundamental drivers, whether you're a multi-billion-dollar John Deere or you're a small little entrepreneurial venture. Those are the 5 fundamental drivers every company focuses on. So I'll give you that simple framework, and I'm going to give you 2 tools. And my guarantee to you, if you will take these tools and use them for the next 2 to 3 quarters, you will build your credibility, you will build your career, and you'll build your company. So with that in mind, I want to share the process. A simple process as you go to engage around these earnings calls. 3 simple steps. You need to prepare for them. Then there's the analysis. And then how do I use it? What do I do with it? So that's what I want to walk into. As I said earlier, you get access to this tool at the end of our discussion today. So as you look to prepare, what do we want to look at doing there? Well, first of all, if you haven't listened to a call, it looks like a few of you had not. Majority of us have. As you go to these calls, most companies will have a quarterly earnings call. By the way, not all do. It's not required for them to do. What's required for them to do is to submit to the Security Exchange Commission their financial performance. If it's an annual, you call that a 10K. If it's a quarter, they call that a 10Q. In the end, don't get too caught up on the terms. It's just the name of the form they have to fill out. Well, in addition to that, by far the majority, I'd say 90+%, 95% of publicly traded companies will take that opportunity to have a quarterly call where they have analysts and investors, as well as anybody can access it, as a way to kind of share not just the information that they're submitting to the regulatory institution, but be able to communicate to the market their strategic objectives, kind of where they've been, where they see themselves going, and how they're going to get there. So typically what happens, you have prepared remarks. The prepared remarks are usually, a typical earnings call is anywhere from, say, a short one would be like 45 minutes. Well, they can get really long, but most of them, the long end would probably be like an hour and a half max. but by far the majority are somewhere between about 50 minutes to an hour. So the first half, you typically have senior leaders. Usually it's the CEO and a CFO, sometimes other leaders, sometimes investor relations, and they share kind of their pitch, their communication. Now, when you read that, remember, this is not regulated. In fact, they even start by saying, we're going to make communications, we're going to share information that we're not going to update for you. Basically, they're kind of saying, look, we're going to share our pitch and what we think we want to do, where we want to go. But in the end, there's a lot of risk around what's going on in our businesses. So they show their prepared remarks, and then they shift gears, and you get a Q&A. Now, the Q&A for majority, I think I can only think of one or two companies where they open it up to anybody to answer. Elon Musk, for example, at Tesla, he's allows individual investors to write questions and submit questions. But by far, the majority of it, you're going to have analysts. These are individuals who work for large investment firms, Wells Fargo, major investment firms, Barclays, et cetera. And they're tracking the stock. So they're going to write a report and submit to their investors what their recommendation is. So that Q&A is where they ask various questions. So what do I need to do to prepare for these events? Well, first of all, you got to locate the call and or the transcript. Now, the question is, so how do you do that? Well, it's very simple. We can do that very simply by shifting gears here a little bit. And you jump to this great website we call Google. We're all familiar with it, right? So as we jump to Google, all you're going to do is pick the company. In fact, you already see it in my history here, John Deere, and it's already picking up investor relations. You can say investor relations. You can say Q3 earnings, however you want to get to it. You click on that, and it's going to give you some information. Now, you'll notice the top three are John Deere locations. Now, I always go to the location itself, but if you scroll down, you'll see other groups that potentially will do little assessments on. Oh, actually, they don't have any. John Deere is really good about their SEO. They come to the top on all of them. But so you'll see stuff like Motley Fool, or Fools is what it's called, Seeking Alpha. You might even see like Yahoo or Google Finance link. But I typically want to go to the company itself. So I click on that right there, and they do a great job. Whoever's running their investor relations is doing a great job. Right here, for example, if you want to listen to their Q4, they've already got when that's going to happen. They've got the date. If you want to add it to your calendar, you can register, add it to your calendar. Now, once the call's already happened, usually within 24 hours of that call happening, you're going to get additional information. For example, let's say I didn't get a chance to listen to it. Right here, I click on that, and it's recorded. I can listen to the call. So don't worry. If there's a company you're looking at, you have a meeting, you can't engage around it in the moment when they're holding it, go to their website. You're going to have that available. Not only that, many of them will have a transcript available. This is who was on the call, and then word for word who spoke and what they said. Now imagine dropping that into ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that and do a quick assessment on what's going on. Great resource available to you. Now, if you don't have a transcript, you can also do that Google search and just ask for a transcript. There's companies like Seeking Alpha, Motley Fool, others that actually have those transcripts as well. Now, a couple other things I really like. I always like to see their slide deck to see what they're really focused on. The slide deck really concisely portrays what the company wants to communicate to the market. So key financial metrics and measures, how we're performing, geography, all that comes into play, which is a great resource. And then finally, they'll sometimes right before the call or right after, you get this press release. Now, the press release is another nice little summation of the key points they want to communicate. So if you want a summary of what they want to communicate in their call, you'll get it from this press release. Again, there'll be some graphs, etc. Many of those become your slide. The one reason I like to get to the actual press release is that's the first place where you can find financial statements. Now, eventually they'll submit to the Security Exchange Commission what's called the 10Q, but usually that takes a few weeks after the call itself. So our call happened on July 28th, and actually they have not published their 10Q yet. In fact, I think it's supposed to come out next week, if I remember correctly. But because I've got the press release, I can see their key statements. So here's their income statement, here's their balance sheet, and then their cash flow statement. So that's how you access the information. Folks, if it hasn't happened, you just register for it. Then once it's happened, go to their website and you can get a webcast. Some will have slide decks, some will have a transcript, other information that can be helpful as you go to access that. So first thing you got to do is you've got to access that information. Let me jump back to where we were. So let's jump in here. So locate the call or transcript. That's how you do it. The second step then is you got to review your notes. Now you say, Brent, what's my notes? Well, once you start doing these multiple times, remember 2 to 3 times consecutively, those are the notes you're going to review. But if you wanted to, you could go back to the website. Remember, you saw Q3. I could have jumped back to Q2 and done a quick assessment in preparation for this call. The last thing I'd recommend is you go to do this. I recommend doing this with somebody else. Now, if you're a manager, bring your team together. If you're a director, bring all of your leadership group together, whatever group you want. If you're an individual contributor, just get a colleague. If you're both working on the same account, for example, you're selling into John Deere, well, then get that colleague and listen to it together. The value of doing it with other people is you'll get greater learning from it. So folks, that's the prepare phase. Pretty simple. So let's talk about how do you analyze it. And the first thing I want to do is, I don't have time to cover the whole 5 driver, but with my group here, many of you are participants of our class. So open up your chat box and let's do a quick review of the 5 drivers. This simple framework of 5 fundamental drivers every company focuses on is a tool we use to kind of consolidate what they're saying to get the key messaging or key information. So let me quickly walk through the 5 drivers. Now, a couple of things you'll notice, there's 5 fundamental drivers: cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. When people think financial or business acumen, many of them think of the statements. Well, the foundation of the statements are the foundation of the first 3 drivers. So if you want to know what's going on from a cash perspective, you're going to look at the cash flow statement. If you want to know what's going on from an income statement, a profit driver, you're going to look at the income statement, and then assets is going to be your balance sheet. That being said, understand these drivers. Finance or business acumen is so much more than understanding your financial statements. Think of them kind of like a scoreboard. You can tell whether you're winning or losing, but really being able to read them and then say, okay, so what should I do about it? That's where the 5 drivers come into play. So let's talk about cash. One of the key things in business that we talk about in our course is that cash is vitally important. In fact, a common phrase we use is cash is blank. How would you explain what cash is? Cash is, put it in the chat box. Okay, king. Yeah, very common phrase. Cash is king. Now let's queen, royalty. Another common phrase is cash is the lifeblood. Cash is the oxygen of a company. In fact, cash is vitally important. If a company runs out of cash, they go into bankruptcy. That being said, most of us don't wake up in the morning and we say, okay, let's generate more cash for the company. We typically are talking more about like profitability. I want to drive more sales or drive more revenue. But the outcome of profit means you generate more cash. If you want to see what was going on from a cash perspective, you're going to look at that cash flow statement. Excellent, Julia. Cash is the company's oxygen supply. Absolutely. Now, profit, there's 2 fundamental levers that drive profitability. And I call them business 101 when I teach the class. If I want to grow my profit, I got to increase one lever and or reduce another lever. If I do those, that will drive my profitability. Does anybody happen to remember what those 2 levers are? If I want to grow profitability at John Deere, what are the 2 levers I have to grow my profitability? Increase, put in the chat box. Okay, yes, I want to increase my revenue, by the way, also known as sales. These are the same concepts. Now, there's actually 2 ways I can grow my revenue or sales, sometimes also referred to as your top line. I can increase my price, what I charge for my product or services, and or sell more of my product or service, what we call volume. And yes, the second thing is we want to decrease our costs. Now, I know that's a new concept for all of us. Probably never ever heard it in your career. That's a joke. Absolutely. This is probably number 1 lever we hear our executives talk about. And if you listen to John Deere, guess what's happening? What they can charge for their products or services is decreased. What their customers, what they can charge for their products or services. Think about, I'm running a farm, I'm in Idaho, a potato farm, and I'm looking to, maybe I've got an old tractor, and I'm going to end up wanting to upgrade that. But all of a sudden, I have a great yield, a huge yield, but everybody had a great yield. So now I've got an oversupply of potatoes, which means I can't sell them at a premium price. That means what I can sell, I'm going to generate less revenue per potato. But what's potentially happened to my costs? Well, you think about the inflationary pressures that we felt. So what's that going to do to my profitability? It's going to shrink my profitability. Versus maybe there's a different part of the world where all of a sudden potatoes were bad that year. And so everybody wants Idaho potatoes. And you see, now I can charge it for a premium price. In the end, those fundamentally are what impacting our profitability, how I can drive revenue and or manage my costs. Now, assets, we talk about asset strength versus asset utilization. What do I have? Cash, equipment, inventory, knowledge, technologies. How do I deploy them to drive greater cash and profitability? That's what the asset driver is all about. Growth is what we need to grow and maintain. We absolutely see that as an opportunity to grow and maintain your business. As you think about growth from a business perspective, if you're not growing, you're dying. Think about innovations that happening, even in a company that's building tractors, right? Significant innovation, self-driving, automation, all the new technology that's available. Pretty interesting as to how to grow our business. So growth becomes vitally important from a business perspective because that's what investors expect. And if you're not growing, you may not be keeping up with the adaptation of your industry or market. And of course, we put this in the middle very purposely because people are core to driving business, whether that be your external customer, those that buy or use your products or services, or internal customer, your teams. How do we get aligned to get greater execution? That's where leadership comes in, alignment of people's jobs to what they're good at, what they love to do. That's a big goal of all companies. So folks, that simple framework of 5 fundamental drivers becomes a foundation as you listen to these calls. Simply, as you'll listen to a call, I'm listening for cash, profit, asset growth, and people. I then go and look at this tool and ask a few questions to kind of assess how well I'm doing. So let me share that first tool. It's called the Executive Alignment Tool. Now, if you've been in our class, you'll be familiar with this. We do it in the class. This resource is just using that simple framework as a way to assess the strategic focus of the company. Now, here's how it works. As you're listening to the call, as you're reading the transcript, or you get an email from your leadership team, or you see a presentation, or you're reading a press release, whatever communication you're looking at, what you're doing, rather than trying to capture everything, you're just looking at the 5 drivers. Are they talking about cash, profit, assets, growth, and or people? That's the first part of it. Now, I got a quick question. Satish is asking, what are the statements that I would look for to understand how a company's growth and people? Well, excellent. So it's not just financial statements. Remember, Satish, it's the communication. So, for example, on this call, there's 12 pages of communication from their leaders, and they're talking about cash, profitability, and assets. But in addition to that, they're talking about whether or not they grow. Then they talk about their teams, their customers, their shareholders. So that earnings call is a great place to capture that information. So the transcript is where I'd go to look for this, or the recording of the webcast. Satish, let me know if that answered your question. So as you listen to that call, I'm listening for those. Now, don't worry if you're saying, Brent, I never taken your class. That's okay. At the end, I'm going to give you access to a simple tool if you're interested in, if you want to do self-development. But even if you don't have time, this tool gives you a quick definition of what we mean by cash. Not only that, it also gives you what I call trigger words, some example words I'm listening for. For example, if I hear stuff like dividends or distributions, stock buyback, debt, issuing stock, those are all cash to me. Versus if I hear stuff like sales, revenue, pricing, volume, EBITDA, EBIT, etc., I'm thinking profitability. Now, again, this is not an exact science. If we have over 100 people or so on this call today, if we were to do this, we would not all get the same number of slash marks. But our company does about 1,000 to 1,200 sessions a year, various companies, various industries. And invariably, the top 2 or 3 drivers will always rise to the top. So first, you're just getting which driver they focused on. Then you answer these simple questions. Which business driver seems to get the most attention? I love the second part of this question. And why? Why could be who they're talking to. For example, if I'm talking to shareholders, investors, which drivers do you think potentially would go to the top? Put in my chat box. So if I'm talking to my investors, my shareholders, analysts, which drivers of my 5 drivers do you think they would for sure want to focus on? Put in the chat box. Versus if I'm looking at my team, if I'm John Deere, I'm John Mann, I'm talking to my internal team, you might see a little shift. For example, yes, you're going to hear a lot about growth for sure, profit and cash. But if I start talking to my internal team, I may still hit profit and cash, but I might hear a lot more about our team, great work, Really appreciate what you're doing. We've had some tough time. Absolutely. So in the end, it could be who you're talking to. It could be what's going on around me. Think about COVID. As COVID hit, the whole world's in trauma. The external factors might be what's driving why I'm communicating this. Regulatory requirements, etc. So which business driver and why? Then what are the the next question, what were the 2 or 3 points the executive was trying to make? What are the goals, trends, and objectives going forward? So kind of what are the key messaging? Then what are they saying about the future? And then finally, because you're listening to an earnings call, the question is, what key questions or concerns are raised by the analyst community? Now, a lot of times when I train or I work with executives, a lot of executives will say, hey, just listen to the prepared remarks. Oh, I agree. It gives you a good foundation of what your executive team wants you to look at. But folks, we don't want to just look at our company. We want to see what's going on around us. If you think about thinking like a CEO, I guarantee our C-suite is looking at what the analysts are asking. The reason I love these calls is because you can tell whether or not the analyst is questioning or aligning with what the executive team is communicating. It's kind of a test to say, here's what our team, our leadership is communicating. Well, how did the market kind of respond? Which, by the way, at the end, you can then go and look what's happened in their stock price. Why is it going up or down? Analysts will write a little summary of what they see and what they view. So it's a nice way to kind of tie the knot on reviewing that quarter. So the analyst question to see, for me, it's a little bit, or what the executive's communicating, is the market really aligning with that or not? So as you look at this tool, I want to jump in and kind of give you some additional ideas or insights of how to look at. So what I've got is I've got a communication from our executive communicators. Oh, it looks like Nathan gave another response. Yes, so the financial statements is another place to kind of see both growth and people as well. So thank you, Nathan, for that additional insight there. Okay, so here's what I've got. I got a quote from Mr. May and his communication to the market. We don't have time to go every quote, but let's just kind of practice using the tool. So on the right-hand side, I've got the 5 drivers. Here's the first statement. Well, all I want you to do is grab your chat box and tell me, which of the 5 drivers do you think he's focused on in this first sentence? The third quarter was another solid quarter, thanks to the efforts of entire John Deere team in partnership with our outstanding dealer network and supply base. What driver do you see he's focusing on right there? Okay, so people for sure, right? We're talking about John Deere team, our dealer network, and we can be talking assets as well, as you like supply base, etc. So definitely, okay. Well, here's the next one. As mentioned in the opening comments, our customers, what driver, across nearly all business segments are facing headwinds, including softer commodity pricing, basically what they can sell their products or service for, and elevated interest rate. Now imagine if what you can sell your products for is decreasing and you want to buy a new piece of equipment, but interest rates are up, that's going to create those headwinds. So as you look at this, yes, you got people in there, you got profitability in there. Absolutely. Cash as you look at that. Against the backdrop, I'm extremely proud of our team's unwavering commitment to the execution and key priorities. This is interesting. A lot of times executives don't talk about their team when they're talking to the market. Why? Whether we like it or not, most investors aren't worried about the team as much as maybe they should. They're more focused on you driving growth, profitability, and cash flow. Can I get any cash back in my pocket? So here's a time where Mr. May is really focusing on his internal team. So definitely people again. They have navigated the business cycle through proactive inventory management, disciplined cost control, while continuing to strive to deliver value for to our customers. You think about that. You're manufacturing big equipment, right? They do small and lawnmowers, et cetera. But you're manufacturing all this equipment. What's the right amount of inventory to have out in the world based upon what the interest is or what demand is? When do I need to ramp up versus when do I need to slow down? That's a tough gig to try and figure that out. They're not like an Apple, for example, where they come out with a new iPhone and they just they have plenty of demand, and so they run out. And so they're trying to get more produced. By the way, that may be part of their marketing scheme or marketing approach. But in the end, what's that right balance? They're dealing with some tough times, and I'll show you that in their numbers. But definitely people there, assets could be part of that, et cetera. So that's how it works. Pretty simple there. Now, what you notice is we have probably 3 or 4 on each statement, but you can kind of start to see the themes. Well, not only do you see Mr. May communicate, but also other senior leaders. So this is their manager investor relations. Just look through that, and in the chat box, tell me which drivers do you see Mr. Rollander communicate? Which of the 5 drivers he focused on? I'll kind of underline stuff that might be trigger words. What drivers are you seeing? I'm seeing some themes here, right? I'm seeing some metrics. I'm also seeing what directions they're going. So now I'm breaking it by segment. Excellent. So a lot around profitability and whether it's growing or not, and it's not growing, it's going this way, right? As well, that is going to impact cash, right? If I don't generate enough profitability, I'm going to generate a cash. Yeah, Adam, I love that. Growth or lack thereof. Yeah, even though it's not going up, it's still talking growth when I see down, down, down across the board. You start to see a little theme here of what's going on. Folks, not only can you do this here, you could do the same thing on analyst questions. Once you're done, though, your document may look something like this, where you kind of go through prepared remarks, analysts. I like to break them by 2 groups. Why? I want to see where we're getting alignment between analysts and their prepared remarks. Now, if you look at this one, you're seeing profitability and growth kind of rising to the top. Again, numbers could be higher or lower. When you do this, don't get caught up. If you're doing with this team, when you get the exact same number, that's not the point. Invariably, as a group, your top 2 or 3, maybe not in the exact order, after doing 1,100 of these or so a year, typically the top 2 or 3 will rise to this top. So once I've done that, the next step is to answer those questions. So that's what I've done. We don't have time to go through everybody answering. So I'm going to quickly share what I saw. And if you, by the way, some of you are coming back. If you had a chance and you want to share your insights, please put them in the chat box as we go through each section. So the first question is, which business drivers seem to get the most attention and why? You can kind of see it. You can kind of see it in those 2 quotes. And now this slide. What are the 2 drivers here? Well, you look at these metrics. These are all profitability metrics. Now, eventually they become cash, but they're definitely profitability metrics. But what else am I seeing here? So which of the 2 drivers would you say they're focused on the most in this? It's what you've been talking about. Up here, we got profit. And the fact that our profit is doing what? It's going down. Look at those percentages. Net sales and revenues down 17%. Net sales down 20%. Net income down 42%. Then earnings per share, a key metric for them and their stock, is down 38%. So already I know that, boy, growth and profit is a big focus of what they communicate. So what are some examples? Why are they talking about this? Well, they've had extensive focus on managing costs, aligning production schedules with marketing demand. That concept of what I was saying earlier. How much do I produce and have inventory out there based upon demand? If I overproduce, I got a bunch of inventory sitting there that people aren't buying, and maintaining competitive operating margins across different segments. So if I keep producing, my costs are going to go up, but if I'm not selling as much, I'm going to remember, if I'm selling here and my costs are going up, I'm going to lessen my profitability or my margins. Across all major markets, they say, we continue to see muted demand resulting from a challenging macro environment. So they're saying the economy, the macro environment that we play in is being challenged. What's impacting it? Well, global stock of grains continue to rebuild with excellent growing conditions. So again, if everybody's producing well, you're going to increase the amount of supply you have. You don't have to be in economics to know if I have a bunch of supply and my demand's not meeting that, what's going to happen to price? You're going to see it reduced. So the top part of my profitability is decreasing, but what's happening to the cost? So in the end, you get right here, the commodity price is down. Well, then what's happening to the other side? Well, I got lower price because large supply, but I'm also getting impacted by inflationary pressures, interest rates. So think about that. You're a farmer in Idaho and you want to buy a new piece of equipment. Well, if all of a sudden what I can charge for my product keeps dipping and it's going to cost me more in interest to buy that, it becomes harder and harder to engage in a new acquisition. So maybe I retrofit it, I upgrade it a little bit. Maybe I go for a used model. In the end, that's what they're facing in 2024. Now, they faced this earlier, and a lot of their conversation for their leadership team is, look, we learned from the past. So they're cutting production. For example, one of their plants, they're cutting 50% of their production in Q4. So they're reducing how much they're going to produce. They're trying to make sure they don't overextend and increase their costs. So why are they dealing with it? It's the macro impacts of increased production level and pricing being decreased, and then inflationary pressures along with that. So what are they doing? What were the 2 or 3 messages? Well, we're trying to be proactive in how we manage our inventory and cost management. With those 2 things in mind, pricing going down, costs going up, I'm going to be real careful about my cost management. And then I'm being proactive around inventory. I'm not overproducing. So I got a bunch of inventory sitting in my dealerships. The executives highlighted their proactive approach to managing production schedules and inventory levels to align with market demand. These actions are designed to protect margins and position the company to respond to future market changes. So now, how are they navigating that? Well, despite facing those headwinds, such softer commodity price and elevated interest rates, the Deere team has made difficult decisions. One of the difficult decisions, they did some layoffs to maintain strong operating margins through disciplined cost management. So reducing production, shutting down some of operation, and then even having to do some layoffs to kind of align with what the demand is for today. Long-term value. So was the last one. So it's kind of like, here's kind of where we're at. Here's what we're doing about it. But let's don't forget the future. We have some opportunities. So how can they continue to develop a value creation for the future? Focused on delivering long-term value through investment in precision agriculture. So this is technology, innovation, automation, and other technology-driven solutions. Position itself as a leader providing innovative products that meet customer needs. It's pretty impressive growing up in Idaho from, having to be on the old tractors, doing stuff, to literally these are basically computers on wheels. They can self-drive. They can do a lot of unique things, and they're kind of at the forefront of that. So what are the goals and trends going forward? So they kind of at the end say, well, where do we go from here? Well, this is their net income forecast. About $7 billion in net income is their forecast, bottom line net income. Tax rates about 23 to 25%. That net income of $7 billion should generate about $6 to $6.5 billion of cash for the company. Research and development, as they think about being innovative, being a technology leader, they're increasing expense there and expecting kind of capital spend around $1.8 billion. Well, how does that boil down into trends or objectives? So number one goal right now is to maintain profitability, even with the challenges they're facing. How are they going to do that? One of that is through inventory management. Further reduce field inventories, particularly in large agricultural equipment, to better align with expected demand. So really trying to reduce inventory. So again, if I got oversupply of equipment and I don't have the demand for it, I'm going to try and sell through that, lessen that, and not build more until I can see that demand recover. And then thirdly, invest in technology and growth. So the cash that we do have, where's that going to go? We're going to reinvest it in our R&D and new technologies. So John Deere aims to continue to invest in precision solutions. That's what they call kind of their technology field, and leverage its technology stack to create long-term value and maintain a competitive edge with their customers. If you look at beyond that, so where is that cash going to go? Cash from operation. Well, they want to maintain a strong balance sheet, so they have a good credit rating. Fund operating and any growth potential that they're looking at, but getting value back to shareholders. 25 to 35% payout of mid-cycle earnings, getting value back to their shareholders, as well as doing stock buybacks. Nathan says, an employee that's a part of a company with a public holding group, do you find that these reports are harder to interpret? And they can be. As a holding group, you think of companies like Berkshire Hathaway, J&J, for example, is somewhat of a holding company, even though you got that great brand. It's hard to get the more kind of minute details around a specific segment. I come across as far as reading them, interpret company growth within overall holding company. Yeah, big growth, but there's so many segments. How do I make sense of it? That's a great insight, Nathan. So what are the key questions or concerns coming from the market? Well, obviously, it kind of flows. The same issues, market demand and production adjustments. Are you really going to maintain that profitability is basically what was there. Impact of economic conditions. interest rates, commodity price, geopolitical uncertainty. How is that affecting your business? So it's not just what you think of as you think about, commodity pricing and increased demand, but how interest rates impacts whether or not people are going to buy their products or services. Geopolitical uncertainties, like we're a global economy, and so geopolitical issues globally. It's an election year. How's that going to impact? We're part of those discussions. And then final kind of was emphasis around financial performance and margins. Where do you see that going? So folks, that's how the tool works. Now imagine you've gone through this and you sit back and you say, okay, I'm an employee of John Deere. What stands out to me? Well, number one, growth's going in the direction we don't want it to go. What's impacting that? Well, pricing, I can't control pricing, but I can control supply. I can't control cost side. How can I manage costs or reduce costs, be efficient and effective is what we can do as we kind of withstand this downturn in demand in the company. So you take that back and you say, okay, so based upon what I heard, what should I be thinking about? What should I as a team think about? Well, the next step of the analysis then is to say, well, let's look at the numbers. Let's see that's what they communicate. Can I see the same information in the numbers? Now, for those who have been through the course, you'll be familiar with this. For those who are not, a quick review. Basically, those 5 drivers we talked about, cash, profit, asset growth, and people, are on the side right here and come down to the bottom. Then here's the 10 most common key metrics. Now, the tool that we have is generic in nature. It's any company. These are the most common metrics a company would look at. Now, if you've taken our class, you know that we have a customized one for your company. For example, if you're in healthcare as a payer, Humana, Aetna, CVS, et cetera, you're going to look at a metric such as the medical loss ratio or benefits ratio, whatever you want to call it, a unique metric to your organization. For some of you, you may have EBIT or EBITDA as a key metric. So get the one that is unique to your company. But if you don't have one that's unique to your company, this was very good as a basic way to look at a company's financials information. So you have the 10 key metrics most companies look at. Now, the genius of this tool is right here. You don't have to memorize. You don't have to be in a class to know where this information is. It tells you where to go to find it. So, for example, if I want to get cash and cash equivalents, I'm going to go to the balance sheet. Now, if there's some sort of calculation I've got to do, they're going to give you it. You'll notice the first 4 here, I'm just going to put them in. I don't have to go and do a calculation. I just go find the number and put it in. So what I want to do is we're going to just do a couple of these together. Make sure you know how to do it, and then I'll show you the numbers. Then we'll jump to the next phase, which is the act phase. So here's how it works. Let's imagine we're going to go. We want to get access to our cash and cash equivalent. Use the chat box if you would. Based on the tool, what statement do I go to find cash and cash equivalent? If I want to go find it, where am I going to go? What statement? Based on the tool, there you go. Excellent. I got at least 2 of you say it right here. I got to go to the balance sheet. You don't have it in front of you. I do. There it is. So it's a US-based company, which means on a balance sheet, they're going to have the most liquid at the top of the asset section, the least liquid at the bottom. So you're going to see cash and cash equivalent towards the top. Give me the number for the quarter. As of July 28, 2024, how much cash did Deere and Company have on hand as of July 28th? Put in the chat box. Julia says $7,004, right? No, just kidding. Right here, it's million. That's $7,004 million of cash they have sitting on their balance sheet. Okay, so I go plug that in, and I got the first number. Well, let's do the next one. I got to get my cash flow from operations. Now, what statement do I go to based upon the tool? Just going to do a few of these to get comfortable using it. So when you get the tool, you know how to kind of approach it. Julia's saying cash flow. Anybody else? Yep. Cash flow is where you see it right here. Got the cash flow. So let's jump to that cash flow statement. Now we're looking for the line called cash from operations or net cash provided by operating activities. Go about a third of the way down. You're looking for net cash provided by operating activities. This represents the difference between all the cash that came into our business, John Deere's business, in the first 9 months of the year, by the way, versus the cash that went out of our business in that same period of time. So the dollar amount is right here. Looks like you got it in there, Julia. Thank you. So I go and plug over here. I put the 4139. Okay, so those are my 2 cash metrics. Let's jump into the profit. I got to get total revenue and net income. What statement am I going to go to using my tool? Mark's got an income. Anybody else confirm that? Yep, we got at least 2 of you saying income. So let's jump over the income statement. I'm looking for my revenue, Total revenue, we're going to do it on the quarterly. So we're going to do the quarterly basis. Total revenue, you got net sales, financial interest, other income. We're going to jump right here. It's going to be our total net sales as well as revenues right there. There you go, Julia. Excellent. Mark, thank you for 13,152. I plug that in. Plug that in right here. And I got to go back to that same statement, get my net income, go right to the bottom line. You see right here, net income attributable to John Deere and Company. You'll see that number, 1734. So you plug that in right there. Now, guess what? I just got those two numbers. Actually, I already gave you the answer. I was going to have you calculate it. See if you can get that same number. So you're going to take the 1734, you're going to divide it by the 13,152. See if you can, and then multiply by 100. That should give you 13.2. What does that say? For every $100 John Deere brought into his company in Q3, they generated $13.20 of profitability. Now, the real question you want to look at to analyze that, is that high or is that low or is that about average? Well, if you know S&P 500, usually the last couple of years has been about 11.5%. So they're actually outperforming the market a little bit. Well, folks, we don't have time to go through everything, but you can continue to do those same calculations. Here's my equity ratio. I get total shareholders' equity and total assets. Where am I going to find that? On the balance sheet. Well, there's the answers to the rest of the questions. Now, what you would typically do is you say, okay, let me compare that here, Q3 of 2024. You can do it two ways. One is to say, well, how does that compare to just the last quarter? They call that sequential, so Q2. But most common is you say, let's go back a year. Let's look at Q2 of 2023, and you can see how the numbers have changed. You got a little bit more cash, a lot more cash generation than we were a year ago. You look at their margins for this is year to date, by the way. So this is the first 9 months, 14.4 versus 13.5. So even though their margins are seeing that pressure, they made changes starting in Q1 to reduce some of the impact of lower demand, and you're seeing it pay off in some good numbers. So you can look at it that way. You can also then look at it in relationship to other competitors. So you can pull a competitor in. You can look at it in comparison to any company. In the end, this is a simple way to see, are we getting better or are we getting worse? This tool is called Navigating the Financial. Well, folks, that is our financial analysis. So at this point, what do I know? Well, I know that they've actually having a pretty good year. I can see it in those numbers, right? I see that their margins actually have improved year over year, even though demand is increasing. So the cost reduction, the inventory management seems to be working. So then now the question is, so what do I do with this? I've gone through it. I've done the analysis. What do I do? Well, one of the core things, the most important thing of any sort of learning experience, you got to do something with it. Here at Acumen Learning, that's a core of what we do. How do we build the capabilities that people can do stuff with it? For example, we had a client, unbeknownst to us, working with a third-party group, say, what did they get from participating, engaging in our programs, the tools and resources, listen to earnings calls, etc. This is what their employees said they got. 84% improved their performance of your business and function. 81% said they increased collaboration, our ability to work across different groups. 77% improved upward communication, their ability to communicate to their leaders. 77% of employees said increased their engagement. I'll tell you, once an employee understands what's going on, why it's happening, and how they impact it, you're going to see an increase in engagement. 75% of employees said they saw an increase in business focus, and 84% said they improved teamwork. Folks, my guarantee is if you engage around business financial acumen, you listen to these calls, you do it with your team, these are the types of outcomes you'll get. Now, if you want some help, deeper dives on that, we're happy to do that. But the most important part of any learning is to do something with it. To know and not to do is not to know. I know some things, I've got to do something with it. So here's the last part of it. The last part of the tool is how do I apply it? 3 simple parts. The first thing is you're asking, what new insights did you gain as a result from your analysis? From my experience, there's 5 things that kind of stood out to me. Number 1, strategic importance of cost management. That understanding is commodity prices decreasing, but inflationary pressures pushing us up. How can I impact cost management within my role? Adapting to market condition, their ability to adapt. They started adapting in January of this, Q1 of this year. They saw demand was decreasing. That's why you're seeing numbers that actually show decent margins, even though they're feeling those pressures. The idea that, look, we're going through a tough time right now, but we are looking at long-term value creation, how innovation, technology, AI can play a role within our equipment. Impact of economic conditions on business strategy. That was just, it brought me back to my roots, right? Imagine if environmental conditions impact what you can do as a business. It's one factor you can't really control, whether or not it rains, right? And then enhanced role of collaboration, how they can work across the groups to get greater engagement around their inventory management. So the next step is, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do based upon this? Well, for me, I'm a consultant. So for me, being able to compare their performance to peers, other groups within their market, it's a great to understand that industry and to see how these other factors impact their business. I can share this information with my consultants, my clients, as well as new customers. Understanding how the global environment is impacting various industries can be important to them. And then finally, if you're with John Deere, man, I would love to see how we can help build your team's business. I can't think of a better time when you're dealing with challenges to come in and say, let's help everybody think like the CEO, help everybody see the big picture of what we're trying to do. Then with their functional expertise, go back and help us make the right decisions. How can we get that management of our costs? Well, the best people to make those decisions are the individuals that day in and day out are engaging. But if they don't see it, if they're so focused here, they're not seeing the big picture, they're going to miss it. So if you're with John Deere and we can help you, I'd love to share how Acumen Learning can help build your team's business or financial acumen. So finally, final step I would recommend is you take this tool and go have a conversation. This will build your credibility with your leadership. So for example, if you've analyzed your own company, sit down with your manager and share, hey, here's the 3 things that stood out to me. I think I want to focus on. How does that align with what you're seeing from a management team? If you looked at a customer or a partner, well, go meet with your sales department or your account team and share, hey, I was looking at our customer. Maybe John Deere's your customer. Here's what stood out to me. How can we market? How can we sell to them our products or service based upon what they're trying to accomplish? And then if you analyze a competitor or benchmark company, well, sit down with the manager and say, well, what can we do to differentiate ourselves? That's the goal of what we're trying to accomplish. So folks, that is the apply phase. In the end, once you've gone through that whole section, remember the second step of the prepare phase was to review your notes. Well, imagine you do this 2 to 3 quarters on your company or a customer or a company you're interested in, how that would change your success and engagement around this business. That's what this tool allows you to do. So here's my question as we wrap up, and I'll give you the tool right here. My question is this. So who are you going to analyze? As you look at this activity, who is it that you want to analyze? Let me see if I can get my poll question. For some reason, my poll question is not working. Let me see. Did I not? There we go. So here we go. Who are you going to analyze? Am I going to analyze a company I work for, a company I sell to, a company I compete against, partner with, invest in, interested in, or next month, we're going to look at Becton Dickinson, a great med device company. Maybe you take these tools and you say, you know what, I'm going to prepare them by listening to Becton Dickinson's Q2 information and go through that. Well, folks, that's what we want you to do. To know and not to do is not to know. We've walked you through that, showed you how to use it. Here's the tool. It's in the chat box. Go ahead and grab that, and that will give you the tool. Now go listen to your company, listen to your customer, a company you work with, sell to, compete against, etc. In addition to that, when you go to this link where you access that tool, you can register for the Becton Dickinson call. Jump in. Schedule 2 or 3 consecutive. It'll really help you to feel comfortable. Also, if you're a company that's looking for learning, if you're individual, you want learning, we've got a great self-paced online. You can do it on your own. We'll give you $100 off. There's a coupon code to do that. If you're a company that's saying, you know what? I want all my team members to understand how to listen to an earnings call. I want them to see the big picture. I want them to help them make better business decisions. If you're working in a sales organization, I want my sales team to understand our customers and how to partner, how to align with what we do. Please reach out to us. That's what we do for 22 years, help companies understand how their companies make money, how decisions are made around the money-making process, but most importantly, what can you do to drive results? That's what we want to do for you. Well, folks, it's been my pleasure to spend some time. We'll stay on the call if there's any questions. If not, make sure you download that tool, get access to the next call, and we'll see you in about a month. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. Thank you for joining us. Please download if you haven't. Morgan's asking where you can access the recording. There's 2 places. You go to our website. Maybe we could get a link in there, somebody. But go to our website and you should, oh, actually it looks right there. in this, our YouTube channel has been placed in there. You can go to that as well. So here's our YouTube channel where you can see some of those. The second place is go to our website. You can see that as well. We have them on our website, links there as well. And you'll see all the industries, all the groups that we've done work with. So it's a pretty robust group of assets there. Thanks, Morgan. Yeah, so next month we're doing Beck and Dickinson. I believe the month after that, we're looking at Saudi Aramco, all my oil and gas team members. Saudi Aramco, one of the biggest oil producers in the world. Very interesting financials and quarterly reports. So look forward to sharing that as well. Well, folks, we're not getting much questions in there. If you have any questions, please put them in. Otherwise, here in about a minute, we're going to close down. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.